Clarity, capabilities, confidence, action steps, direction, and simplicity. This is what you receive with growthtofreedom.com. Freedom is the new capital, and we're helping leaders, executives, business owners, and you transform your career, business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. I'm Dan Kuschell. Thanks for making us part of your day. We've got a great show today. The doctor is in the house. We're going to be talking about the FIT financial formula. We're going to be talking about the pitch at the palace. I mean, you're going to get news that you can use because it's about the pitch at the palace. The Duke of York has spoken, and we're going to fill you in on what that means. We're going to talk about the FIT financial formula with Dr. Cristy Lopez. You're going to walk out of here today with the FIT, or the financial FIT tracker, and a whole lot more. So our show today is presented, of course, by Genius Network, and all of our guests brought to you by the Genius Network hotline. We'd love to connect with you on Twitter. You can join us or follow us at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan_Kuschell. Or send us an email at info@growthtofreedom.com. That's info@growthtofreedom.com. So we're going to dive into it, giving you more clarity, confidence, and capabilities. Oh, and stay tuned because we've got a very special gift today that Dr. Cristy Lopez and I are going to be giving to you, and you'll hear more about that. So today we're talking about finances, money, and wealth. I mean, think about it. Have you ever been in a place in time where you stopped and wondered, why is it some people seem to have the Midas touch, that everything they touch seems to turn to gold financially, and then others who work really, 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 really hard seem to struggle to get by? Well, today we're going to talk about that, why it happens, what you can do about it, and how to transform your financial future. And so with that in mind, I want to introduce our guest today, who she's become a regular expert and guest host of the show, Dr. Cristy Lopez. If you're just joining us for the first time, you don't know who Dr. Cristy is. She's a psychologist. She's been a guest expert appearing on Dr. Phil. She's also been on the show Downsized. She, in many ways, is a celebrity expert, if you will, the celebrity doctor, if you will, and me, I'm just I was the player to be named later. And so there you have it. So why don't we jump right into it, Dr. Lopez, and hit on the FIT financial formula. What is it, and what does it mean for people who are watching and listening today?
Sure. Well, the FIT financial formula is a process that I developed to help people with all matters around money.
Did you invent money too? Is that like Al Gore inventing the internet?
Oh, I guess
kidding.
We'll see. Okay. That would be great. But no, it's money is a huge part of people's lives, and it's very emotionally laden. So when people come in, we talk about all kinds of areas, including money. And so this is the FIT financial formula is a way, it's like a process, a framework to help people to work through and talk about all issues around money.
Speaking of issues around money, by the way,
yes.
I find it interesting. I don't know if you find it as interesting as I do. I find it interesting when people say, money doesn't buy happiness.
Right.
Well, it may not buy happiness, but it puts a hell of a down payment on it.
Well, it sure helps, yes.
And it certainly is a vehicle, and it's a tool. And what kind of toolbox do you have? I mean, do you have the myth or misconception that money isn't important? And it isn't. The love of money, I think as the Bible quote goes, that many people misquote all the time, is money is the root of what?
All evil.
All evil.
Yeah.
And if you're stuck in those beliefs, which are limiting, maybe it's no wonder why you haven't been able to achieve the financial security, maybe financial freedom, or the financial transformation that you deserve. And we want to help shake that from you today. We want to help you with your money, and we want to help you go from around money to And that's what Dr. Lopez is going to be here to stop. So I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, this is the thing. People have a lot of beliefs around money, and you really need to be aware of what they are, because whether you are aware or they're subconsciously operating, that's going to influence your behavior around money. So we need to get very clear on what those things are. So like what you just mentioned, because if you remember, anyone who grew up in the 80s, if they remember, greed is good.
Gordon Gekko.
Yes, exactly.
Wall Street.
But then what did people think of that character? And if they thought that was terrible and I don't want to be the person who's like that, then they're going to tend to shy away or avoid from things around money. So So the Fit Financial Formula really gets into all of this depth and this like thorough understanding of all things related around money, so you can then work with it, because usually people have unhealthy patterns around money. I mean, I don't know. Do you know anybody who has unhealthy patterns around money?
I've probably the majority of my life had unhealthy habits around money, and I had to really break away from those and unlearn and relearn.
Right.
And, in order to, I guess, advance, if you will, I had to be willing to renovate the house, so to speak. In fact, I had to tear it down to start over, to then innovate, to then, have the ability to a degree, build a nice living.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, because you have to be aware of your unhealthy patterns so you can stop those and then put in its place to be usually what people want is to be a good steward of money. And that way you can direct how you are dealing with money in all kinds of ways. How do you make it? How do you keep it? How do you grow it? How do you spend it? How do you leave it? So there's a lot when it comes to money.
And so speaking of that as well, so you hit on something that I think is really important for you to hear and watch right now, is being a steward of money. I mean, think about it. What is your relationship with money? Think about the power of that for a second. I mean, how you treat money does have an impact and influence the results of what happens in the transformation of attracting, keeping, and so on. So repeat that again, because I think it was very important. A steward of money around what it was making it,
keeping it, growing it, spending it, and giving or leaving it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So talk about, what does a good steward look like?
Well, it will be a little bit unique to every person, but the general concept or idea is that you have a healthy relationship with money. And then, so what does that mean? So, there's going to be a little bit of difference between people, but in general, there's going to be some commonalities because we're all humans. So there's always the part of the human nature part and then the unique part. But you have to figure that out for yourself, because if you are trying to like go off of what you think somebody else says or wants, you're going to have a lot harder time actually being in line with your behaviors with that. So this is why you really have to get clear on these things. Your thoughts, your beliefs, and then your behaviors, because they are tied together.
Absolutely. So your thoughts create the behaviors which are the actions that create the results.
Right.
So, as Henry Ford has said, thoughts are what? Thoughts are things.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts around money? In fact, write that down right now. Obviously, if you're driving, don't write it down. But do us a favor. Write down, money is, and then fill in the blank.
Yeah,
right? That's a good exercise to do, right? Money is, and then fill in the blank. Money is not, and then fill in the blank.
Yeah, because that's like a free association type exercise. You give them the stem, very good, and then see what comes up. Now,
you've interviewed and you've worked with, that's what you do as a psychologist and a coach, and you help people transform around a lot of different things, money being one of those important factors. And the reality is, what would you say is a common lie or myth that you've noticed with people around their money issues?
Well, there are a lot, and I think you brought up kind of one of the most common ones, which is this idea about that money is evil. Money is the root of all evil, or money is bad, that people who are just about money, that they must be bad people, they were just greedy. Like, they get these, somehow there's been like this socialized message around money that these people have gotten, and then who wants to do that then? Because I don't want to be a bad person. And even, like, I got to say, even like within my own profession, or like the helping professions in general, they don't teach us about business. It's all about helping, which is great, but they really kind of have this attitude of, well, it shouldn't have anything to do with you or us as a business person or about money. It is solely around helping.
Awesome. And so let me just see if I've got this right. So it's around the habits around money. It's about having healthy habits. It's about being a steward of being able to make it, keep it, grow it, spend it.
Mm-hmm. And leave it or give it.
And then leave it or give it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great framework to be able to build from. And when we come back, Dr. Lopez is going to talk more about the financial fit formula. We're going to also give you a system or a strategy that you can put in place starting today that will give you a financial fit tracker that is so simple and easy to use. We're also going to reveal to you the 10-10-3-7-70 formula to better financial wealth, prosperity, and abundance, and that and a whole lot more coming up next. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. Thanks for making us part of your day. To summarize what we've been covering up to this point in the show, we've had Dr. Cristy Lopez, psychologist. She's been a guest expert contributor to Dr. Phil, as well as the show Downsized. And we've been talking about creating better wealth, better financial security, and freedom for you and your family, helping you transform your financial outlook and being able to get a grasp of what it's going to take to be able to build a solid financial platform, not only today, but also for the future. And, Dr. Cristy was talking about being a steward of money. And if I had it correctly, Dr. Cristy, it was about being able to make it, being able to keep it, being able to grow it, then being able to
spend it.
I have a hard time with that. I want to call it invest. Invest it. I kind of look at spending and investing, but
growing I see as investing.
Okay,
but yes.
And then the last one is being
give
able to give it or leave it.
Yeah. Which
is your legacy, apparently. Right?
Yes.
So isn't it amazing that there are a lot of people, there's this old adage that says that if you spread all the wealth in the world amongst people in the world, within a matter of a year or two, it'd be back in the same hands that it started in, right? Mm-hmm. And it's around the idea of financial habits. The same thing, how many times have we heard someone who wins the lottery in a matter of 2 years, they're completely broke, bankrupt, and so on. Right? And now, speaking and being transparent, in my history of my business career and personal career, I've had trouble and challenges with money. I went through a bankruptcy years ago, and I'm not proud to say that, but I'm also not afraid to hide it either. Mm-hmm. And, the beauty of it is that it doesn't matter where you've been, it matters where you want to go. And it starts with developing good habits, and that's what you teach.
Yeah, well, and even just talking about maybe your experience right there, because some people have an issue that you first talked about, which is, all of a sudden you get this money and you don't know how to do that because you hadn't developed those skills, and so you lose it. Now, there are people who actually are good at making money, but they'll do this thing. They'll make a big amount of money and they'll accumulate this wealth, and then boom, they lose it. But then they'll go back and they'll do it again, and they'll gain it again, and then boom, they lose it. So,
and how I liken it, by the way, is almost like human relationships.
Yes.
Like in human relationships, you usually don't see the holistic approach like you're talking about in ability to develop relationships. So they're the seducers of the world, right? Yes. That are really good at being able to make it, but not keep it.
Exactly.
Right? And they're in and out of relationships all the time. And so in money, you see the same thing. They're in and out of their relationship with money. So speak to that a little bit.
It is very much like a relationship with a person. And so when I work with somebody, we talk about your relationship with money, and we go through your relationship history with money. So when I work with somebody about relational history with people, we go through the history of that. We do the same thing with money.
And I admit, I remember us going through that process of working together, and you made it, you're kind of smiling because, we decided which one I fit into. And it was more, admittedly, I've had history and had patterns of being a seducer around money because, frankly, I get bored with projects. And so I want to go on to the next exciting big thing to work on once I've kind of felt like I've mastered this thing.
Right.
But with money, the key is now I've kind of looked at it, and I've been teaching this in a different way for many years now, which is you can have a primary source, right? And then you have an other source. So the key is to keep your golden goose in play and allow the ability, the leverage, if you will, of either money to work for you, time to work for you, a little bit of both. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So while you learn the new skills or learn the new ways, that's a very good, safe way of going about it. And so that, and then like the seducer of money thing, it actually has a lot to do with chemicals in your brain. So it's the same thing. When you first get into a relationship with somebody, you have that high, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That's a chemical reason. Okay. So that high actually does not, as most people discover later after months going, the same thing happens with money. And the same thing happens with when people think they're getting a good deal, or just all of these different things. There is so fascinating how irrational people are in general, and then around money.
So let's talk about, back up a step, because money to me is like a result. It's like if you grow a tree, plant apple seeds, it grows. Now you have apples you can pick off of it for a lifetime. But there's the seeds and there's the roots that produce that tree. So why don't we talk about what is money in general?
Yeah, well, actually, you posed that to me, and I took you really literally when you first said that, because I was like, well, it's currency. And I was like, what is he asking me? And then I basically kind of turned it back to you, and you told me something that I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I think I'm just going to turn it back to you to have you explain your philosophy around what money is.
Well, I see it, quite frankly, as an asset because, to me, it's cause and effect. I mean, you produce a certain type of result that ultimately, that's the cause, and then it ultimately produces a result, which is the effect of that cause, right? And so if we want to earn more, basically do more. If we want to increase our ability to earn wealth, provide more value, right? One of the things I feel very proud of, you've met my kids, Kyler and Kira, and, one of the things that I am really grateful for is I'm able to teach them money habits at a young age. And when I ask them, I go, how do you make money? And they go, value creation and transformation, right? And so, I was talking to a gentleman the other day who's a billionaire, and I asked him, I said, well, how do you go out and create a $10 billion company? And he goes, very plain as day. It's like we're having a conversation over lunch trying to figure out what we're going to order off the menu. He goes, oh, well, that's simple. Just, if you want $1 billion company, solve a $10 billion problem. I mean, I was like, I'm done. Like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So think about it. As you're watching right now or you're listening right now, if you want to increase your ability to earn more, provide more value. Now, how do you do that? One of the best books I've read this year is a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And they talk about developing a skill that is rare and invaluable. My good friend Joe Polish talks about rare and invaluable skills in a couple ways. So I see it as an asset. And to me, there are a couple really critical skill sets that I think everybody in the world would be well served to discover and learn no matter what they're in. Because I know, how about you? Do you know people who are engineers that are not doing well financially? Do you know people that are doctors that are not doing well financially? Do you know athletes, right, who aspire to be great athletes? They dedicated 20 years of their life and it didn't work out for them. Well, it doesn't mean they didn't work hard. It just means their skill compared to the marketplace at that time was not rare and invaluable. So how do you develop that rare and invaluable skill? I think to the general population, I mean, an asset, for example, it could be someone being an athlete, right? It could be someone being a doctor. It could be someone who has a musical talent, whether it's a voice, whether it's an instrument, right? Or the ability to gather crowds. Well, I look at all of us, what would be, like I've shared with my kids, that the two most valuable skills that they could learn in anything they would ever do, no matter what they would do, would be marketing and selling.
Yeah.
Marketing and selling. And what is marketing? As my good friend Joe Paulo says, marketing is nothing more than storytelling, and influence is nothing more, or selling is nothing more than influence and persuasion, right? So think about that right now. What if whatever you're doing, you're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, whatever you might be doing today in your career, if you got better at the ability to influence and the ability to, be a storyteller or be a marketer or work in sales, what would that do for your career path? I believe that it would immediately give you a rare and invaluable skill compared to most people in the market who aren't good at it because they haven't taken the time to learn. So to me, money is about developing an asset first and foremost, those rare and invaluable skills. Another way that Joe Polish talks about it, he talks about capabilities, right? In order to grow your opportunities, let's say you're right now at whatever, $100,000 a year income. If you want to get to a place where you're earning $250,000 a year, you need to get capabilities that match that, right?
Yeah.
So
what you're describing, or the way I take it, is just like life in general. It's a growing and evolving thing. And if you are going towards this next level, you have got to grow and evolve to be able to get to that next level. And you've got to do things differently to get differently.
In order for things to change, you've got to be willing to what?
Change.
To change. In order for things to be different, you've got to be willing to do things different. Now,
exactly.
We promised you a gift today. And when we come back, we're going to actually go into the financial fit tracker. We're going to get into a lot more in depth about money, making it, keeping it, growing it, spending it, as well as leaving it. And we've got a gift for you today, a gift package. When you call our office today to get your Growth to Freedom gift package, we've got an audio that Dr. Lopez is going to give you talking about values, who you are, what you stand for, and what do you really want. And this is such a great exercise to do around money. In addition, we've got an audio program called Prosperity is a Choice. And we're going to get into more details about the financial formula. We're going to go into 10-10-3-7-70. We've got 2 incredible free books that we'll gift you today, as well as an audio and video program. And if you want to get this gift package, package easily valued at $197. You can call our office right now and take us up on it. It's 602. By the way, the gift package is free. Did I say that clearly enough? It's free. No shipping, no handling. It's free. You can call our office at 602-246-3389 while supplies last. They won't last long. 602-246-3389 and get your gift package, the Growth to Freedom gift package, or visit our website at growthtofreedom.com/gift. That's growthtofreedom.com/gift. We'll be right back with Dr. Cristy Lopez talking about the financial fit tracker and the financial formula right after this. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. Thanks for making us part of your day. All our guests today are brought to you by the Genius Network Hotline and presented by Genius Network. And if you're just joining us, to give you a summary of the show to this point, we've been talking with Dr. Cristy Lopez, psychologist. She's been a regular guest on Dr. Phil as well as the show Downsized. And we've been talking about money, finances, wealth, how to make it, how to keep it, how to grow it, how to spend it, and how to leave it or give it, if you will. And we've been talking about, having the right capabilities to match up with opportunities, or seeing yourself or seeing money really as a byproduct of the assets that you have or your skills or capabilities, right? And so in this segment, we're going to be talking about the financial fit tracker. We're also going to give you some exercises that you can apply starting today that can have you on a path to better financial success. So with that, why did you create the financial fit system in the first place?
Well, I've seen so many people over all these years, and money is something that does always come up. And there is a lot of suffering around money. So there's a lot of suffering around various different things. And then when it comes to money, coming up with the Fit Financial Formula, it gave me like a structure or framework to help people to be able to work through that so that they don't have to suffer and they don't have to keep repeating these same unhealthy patterns. So people don't realize that, they get really good at the things that they don't like or the reasons why they come in. Oh, they're really good at being depressed, or they're really good at being anxious, or they're really good at having an anger issue or money problems, or they're really good at those things.
Yep.
So we got to figure out what went into that, because you actually have the power to slow that down. Like I call it a snowball. So slow the snowball down in those directions and then get it going in the direction you want it to go. And so the Fit Financial Formula is the framework for how you get that snowball going into the way you want it to go to develop these healthy money patterns versus being stuck repeating these same unhealthy patterns over and over.
And how big of an issue do you find that it is that people hold on to their old beliefs, their old values, when you're working with them to make these transitions to, call it a bigger, better future?
Right. It is extremely hard. And these are people that are coming because they want help and they want change. And it is still hard. For some reason, people really do not like change. And then this is also why if there's multiple people involved, so like a spouse or a business partner or anyone else that has to do with money, you need to also include those people or at least have some consideration, because if the other person sees you changing and they don't know or understand why, they will either consciously or subconsciously pull things to try and get it back to the way it was, even if the way it was terrible.
It's amazing. I mean, what's the cost of not being able to have a good relationship with money?
Yeah, well, we know that the cost, if you don't, is divorce. I mean, the money is is the top reason why couples argue, and that leads to divorce. So I'm guessing people out there have probably experienced this. Like, not only do they suffer themselves, a lot of times people can't even sleep at night because they're worried about money. But then how does that translate with you and your partner or you and your business partner? And then there's usually fights around that and a lot of stress that goes with it.
The stress that goes with it. And so what you're saying is if you can take the time to apply good habits and replace old habits, first get rid of the beliefs, because what comes first, by the way?
Yeah.
The belief or the habit as it relates to better financial habits, if you will.
So I'm always open to bi-directional things. Okay. But
so in other words, both?
Yeah, but generally, I usually will start with the thought part. Now, it can happen that you behave a certain way or something happens that creates this behavior and then the feeling or the thoughts or all that follows. It can happen. But when it comes to money particularly, it tends to be the thoughts, and then the behavior follows. Because, when you're little, you're not running around with money,
Right.
But you are running around learning these lessons. So this is part of your relationship with money and your relationship history, is where did those lessons come from? What did you see and observe from your parents or from other people? Oh, actually, now all of a sudden I had that memory about the, what is the guy, Kiyosaki, or is that his name?
Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, okay. Isn't that his premise, that he had a role model one way and a role model the other?
Yes.
So, okay, sorry. That just popped in there. And I was like, that's kind of the thing, because when you're little, you're not necessarily behaving with money. You're learning and you're thinking about money.
Yeah, and what's so interesting that pops up for me is, when you run into those scenarios of, you've got call it an old limiting belief, right, which creates the habit, or one leads to the other, and then it repeats itself, and so on. What is a technique someone could use right now to shake themselves out? Like what I'm thinking of right now, when I went to Catholic school as a kid, we had this nun, her name was Sister Teresa, and she would walk around, she had this paddle and this ruler, and depending on how many times you had been you noticed, if you will, she would either use the ruler or the heavier paddle and smack it across your hand, right? This is old school days. Today they'd probably put Sister Teresa in jail or something. But then she used to get us in the hallway and she'd ask us, what flavor milkshake do you want? And so there was one style that was a chocolate milkshake, and then there was a vanilla milkshake and a strawberry milkshake, and so on.
Yeah,
so
I use different methods.
Are those your methods when you're working? Okay.
No, I use different methods. So the thing is, and you'll probably hear me say this over and over, whenever you're trying to take something down or change or get rid of something, you have to replace it with the healthier what you're trying to do. Because if you just try and do this part, it becomes what I call a whack-a-mole. Which is
a whack-a-mole.
A whack-a-mole, because if you
is that the technical medical?
Yes, I learned that in school.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I call it a whack-a-mole because it reminds me of that game. Because if you just take down your issues or problems with money, guess what's going to happen? It's going to pop up over here in a different way. So let's say about like food.
Yep.
Okay. Then you try and take down your food issue, but if you don't replace it with something healthy, then up pops something like smoking or drinking, and it becomes a whack-a-mole. So you have to...
So in other words, you start chasing a bunch of different things to replace the one.
Exactly. So you have to deal with that and then replace it with the healthy schemes or thoughts or behaviors and everything that's attached to that. And one of the main things that I do with people to get going is around values.
So what would be an exercise that someone's watching or listening to right now that they could do, whether it's a few questions they ask themselves or otherwise, that would give someone a better foundation for financial success?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. You on your own could try and do a little bit of this work as far as like the history and the relationship around money. And you're asking yourself these kinds of questions. What is, like kind of the money exercise you opened with.
Yes.
You can just do that to start off with and then ask yourself about what is the relationship I have with money. How would you describe that?
What is the relationship with money?
Yes. So
Okay.
now this is you like going through your history, because what lessons did you learn about money? So oftentimes one that is pretty common is people will have a thing where they equate money with love. And then you find out through their history why that developed. And it develops often because people's parents are busy and they're working. And so they don't necessarily have a lot of the quality time, but what they were able to do was give a gift or give money. So somehow then that fused in their mind, associated that love is money. Love is gift. And that actually becomes there's a thing called love languages.
Yes.
There is one of gift giving. And that's because usually that's how somebody was shown that they were loved. And they take that from childhood and they go forward with that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a friend of mine that I know really well that actually the pattern that they had around money was it needed to be a materialistic gift. Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, if you wrote that person a note that said, I love you, or, I care about you, or was thinking about you today, that was almost like a secondary factor, and it had to be a gift. And many times it had to be a pretty substantial gift for it to really mean something. So the question is, what is your relationship with money? Almost sounds like a question to ask is, what does money mean to you?
Yes. Yeah. And what lessons did you learn about money?
What lessons did you learn about money?
Yeah. Because sometimes people end up in a situation where, we got this windfall or we got some money, and then my dad left, and then my parents divorced or something like that. So lessons around money. And then what are you teaching if you have children? Then what are you teaching So that's another thing to be very aware of, because this goes generation to generation to generation, which is why it's very important for people to do the work, because if they're passing along unhealthy patterns generation to generation, we would want to start it and start a new legacy of healthy patterns around money.
And it's all about healthy relationships around money, right? And so that's what we're going to be able to share with you. Will you stick around for the next segment?
Oh, yes.
I know we can go into a lot more questions.
Yeah.
We need to get into the financial fit tracker. We're going to talk about the 10-10-3-7-70 formula. That and a whole lot more coming up next. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. To summarize what we've been covering up to this point, we've had Dr. Cristy Lopez talking about the FIT financial formula. We've been talking about how you can transform your personal and business financial future. We've been talking about increasing your capabilities to match up with your opportunities, talking about those assets that you have. I mean, you possess it. You've probably got a book inside of you right now. You've got a story to share. You've got a song to sing, something that's rare and invaluable as far as your skill set. We left off the last segment with the questions, and those questions were incredible. So what is your relationship with money? What does money mean to you? What lessons are you learning, or did you learn about money? And what are you teaching others about money as it relates to kids? I mean, I think that's a great one. The best way to learn anything is to teach it, right? So go teach your dog today. Go teach your cat some of these success principles, and or go teach some friends if you want. But that being the case, let's dive into the financial fit tracker. And what are some other exercises besides these questions, these foundational questions to be able to ask, that someone can do to start understanding their true relationship? So there's the theory of the relationship with money that we think, but then there's the reality of what we do with money. It's the old adage that Mark Victor Hansen taught: you've got to be, to do, to have. So the questions are helping us set a framework of us as a being, and then what are we doing? And this exercise, the financial fit tracker, is really going to demonstrate to people the do part. So why don't you talk about that?
So I'm just going to give a quick example. So I put people through this exercise around values. So there's like literally these strips of paper that have a value on them. So I'm just going to give you two. So like there's a value around being philanthropic. Okay, so you can choose if that's a value you hold or not. There's one around material things. Okay, so there's like several, and it's like a little card sort type thing. And then you bring up your top values. So this happens almost every time. People will do that, and I'm like, they give me their top three, and then I ask them, what was your last big financial decision that you made? And then they'll tell me, and I'll ask them, did those values play into it? But before I even ask the question, you could see it on their face, and they'll usually say, that didn't go into my into my decision making. My values did not go into my decision making. So that's the disconnect between thought, or what you're hoping for, and then what you're actually doing. So after people do this and you get clear on, hey, these really are my values around money.
So let me stop you there for a second. So number one, establish the values that you have related to money.
Yes.
Right. And then if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is essentially create a sifting and sorting mechanism, or a decision-making process of what you do as it relates to money. So in other words, the way my brain is thinking about it, identify the values, and then any decision you make related to money is filter them through those values.
Yeah. Do you actually do that? Because most people do not. And it's this whole thing about alignment. When you're in line with your values for anything or around money, that's where people feel like peace, satisfied, contentment, all of this kind of thing. And what they discovered is like, oh, I thought I had all of these great values, but now when I look through the past, I was not making my decisions with those values. And what I have people do, so the Fit Financial Tracker, is to track then. Well, let's just see then. So from now until like a week from now.
So 7 days.
Yes. Literally keep track of all of anything about money. Anything you did with money, how it came in, how it went out, like what was attached to it. You're going to get this log, basically. So you get this data snapshot over 7 days around money. Then you can compare it to your values. And again, what usually happens is people will see what they're actually doing usually is not in line with their top values. And a lot of times they even find out a lot of what they're doing is in line with something they didn't even put as an important value at all.
So what would you say to someone watching or listening right now, Dr. Cristy, that when you say that, it's such a simple exercise, right? And you had me go through it. And they start the process of the 7 days and they roll their eyes back. This is so simple. I don't need to. I'm too good to that. I'm too cool for school. Whatever the case, I want you to look in that camera right now, and I want you to be a coach, and I want you to give them a hard butt approach to what you would do as a coach if they were giving you that weak excuse.
That weak excuse, no pun intended, for the weak tracking.
That's right.
Well, I think my approach is a little bit less tough. It's kind of more
Okay,
of
I'll be that guy.
Yeah,
I'll be your heavy.
You're the bad cop, I'm the good cop.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I usually do it of like, hey, like with a curious kind of thing. Like, well, hey, we'll see what happens when we come back with it. And, yeah, you could possibly be completely right, but I guess we'll see. And after I work with people, a lot of times I don't even have to really say anything because my facial expressions, they usually know where I'm going. And then they usually know, yeah, I need to go through these exercises because this happens for other topics too. So sometimes I do get a little lip,
Yep.
but then over time, I don't even really have to do too much, but maybe raise an eyebrow.
And what would
know.
you say to the person who just checks out? Because maybe they're intimidated or embarrassed or humiliated. And I felt all those things.
Yeah.
When I went through years ago, folks, I went through my bankers. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I thought my life was over in many ways.
Yeah.
And I felt like a failure, a monumental failure. I was going to look to my parents and say, I had to do this. But what would you say to that person who's feeling that little bit of embarrassment or guilt or whatever is associated or ashamed related to this exercise?
First, it's natural and normal.
Normal.
Okay, so I talk with people about this a lot. It would be weird if you didn't have some of these things. So it's natural and normal, but now we have to figure out what's all attached to that. Because why would a bankruptcy be considered a failure? Or why would making X amount be considered, average? Because what does that mean? So now this is when you have to get into the broader work, because it's not just money is just not, a silo by itself. A whole bunch of stuff is going to be connected to it. So then you have to kind of do that background work to figure out what is all behind it, because that's why money is so powerful, or why somebody is doing whatever they're doing. It's so powerful is because it's got the power of all of these things that are connected to it. So you have to explore all that.
Explore all that. So speaking of exploring, number one, you want to ask the questions. Number two, you want to look at your values. Number three, you want to go through a 7-day fit tracker that essentially will give you an itemization of all the things that you've brought in related to money and had going out related to money. And then how would you label those? Is there some way to label it as a necessity, luxury, or what does that look like?
So this is another thing to go over, is the difference between a need versus a want. Okay, and a lot of people get this mixed up. Okay, but then once you kind of work with them and you talk with them about it, or you just do your own work yourself, then you're better able to delineate, because a lot of times people are just thinking like, well, they're all needs. Okay, well, let's just see. So it's that curious thing, like, well, let's just see. Let's get into this a little bit more and explore this, and then that's when you can start being able to see and start delineating between needs and wants.
And it's not about, sacrificing and not, asking for the better things in life, right?
Yeah, because you can have both your needs and wants, but it's helpful if you know the difference between.
And once you establish the difference between, what would be the next step for someone to be able to take?
Well, there's many ways that you can go on this. So what is the difference between the need and the want? And then what is it how does that coincide with what you're trying to do? Okay, you also then have to take into consideration if there's someone else in the picture. Because if there's a spouse or a business partner, you're going to need to find out what's going on with them and on their side, because it's the whole other thing. What's their relationship with money? What's their history with money? Because if you're going to be trying to work together, you're going to need to know those things about each other, and then do you have a shared goal? And then that's when you kind of get into goal setting and how you're replacing it with the healthy patterns to work your way towards what you're trying to do.
And it almost sounds like even having a shared value system would be important in that type of in any relationship for that matter, marriage, business partnership, etc., right?
Yeah, and so I do work a lot with couples too, and even businesses where there's family members. Okay, so but even if you're in business with someone that's not a family member, there is a high correlation with successful couples or successful relationship is not only knowing what the person's vision is and what their dreams, goals, aspirations, philosophy, all that stuff. They definitely have to know what that is for each other, but they have to share a good amount of it. You don't have to completely overlap. It's kind of like the Venn diagram thing. But if they have a good amount that's shared, that usually bodes well for the success of the relationship.
The success of the relationship, and that's what it's all about. We want to bring the ability for you to have a better, successful relationship with the people you care about, your family, your business associates, your friends, your neighbors, anybody that you're going to have an impact on, your kids for that matter. And money is certainly a big piece of that relationship. You know, as much as people want to hide from it and say it's not important,
Right.
you know, it's only not important if you don't have it. And you can't make it, and you can't keep it, and you can't grow it, and you can't ultimately leave it. And so with that in mind, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I want to give you a quick framework, and we've got a special gift package that Cristy and I, Dr. Lopez and I, are going to gift you here today as well. And you know, it's built around the financial formula of 10, 10, 3, 7, 70, 10% that you pay yourself first. It's an old Dave Ramsey strategy. 10% that you give away, 3% that you invest in your fund money, 7%, which is your ability to invest in your personal education, and then 70% really is a framework to live below your means. Now, for sake of time, we're going to be able to give you this audio called Prosperity is a Choice as part of our collective gift package today with Growth to Freedom. And we'll get you that audio so you can go more into deep understanding of what that 10, 10, 3, 7, 70 formula is all about, the powerful impact that it'll have. Dr. Cristy Lopez has got a gift for you as well. Now, with that being said, how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you, working with you in coaching or working with you in therapy? I know you're here locally in Phoenix, so how would that work?
Well, my phone number is 602-323-7824, and then the website is my name, so www.CristyLopezPhD.com. No H in my Cristy.
CristyLopezPhD.com, and the phone number one more time?
602-323-7824.
7824. I know it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us here today. I know I'm better for it. We're better for it. And ideally, you're better for it. Thanks for being a part of growthtofreedom.com today. Stay tuned for next week's show. Same time, same bat channel. We'll be looking forward to helping you transform your life, business, and relationships, providing you more clarity, capabilities, and confidence with growthtofreedom.com. Make it a great week.